Good morning and welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you're joining us this morning. I can see that there already are some people joining the live room, and I'm sure that the number of people here will only increase in the next few minutes. So I will just go ahead and get started with a few technical items. Hi and welcome. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I know it's very early on in some of the Western time zones of the country. So thanks so much for getting up to join us early for the first session of our first series of webinars for the general audience in 2022. So my name is Erica Hubbard. I'm the Content Marketing Manager at Lang Financial Group, and I'm also going to be hosting this week's events. And I can already see that our room is filling up more and more. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with if you're one of our regular attendees, you'll be familiar with this, my first tech check. So a lot of the other members of our marketing team are working really hard to make sure that we're delivering on all of the audio-visual components of today's event. So if you can see and hear me clearly, if you could go ahead and type a Y into the chat box on the lower right-hand side of your screen, that will let everybody on our team know that everything is going well technically, and it will also help you or help me to show you where that chat box is, because that chat box is actually going to be really useful. Thank you, Tom, so much for typing Y. Steve, John, Joan, Ryan, Susan, thank you so much, everyone. Clyde. And this chat box here is also where you'll be typing any questions that you have throughout the events today and tomorrow. So at any time, if you have a question that in Jim's presentation provokes a question, go ahead or a question that you have been thinking about since the last session and that didn't get answered or that you haven't submitted before, just go ahead and type it into that chat box. And Brian, one of the other members of our marketing team, he collects all of those for me. And I will try to pepper them throughout the session this morning and today and tomorrow afternoon. Paul, Joe, David, Ken, Keith, Mark, thank you so much, everyone, for typing a Y to let us know that everything is working well. So the next question I usually ask, and I think some of you have already anticipated me, but I'm joining everybody here this morning from Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If anyone would like to share where you're joining us from, I know we usually get an audience from sort of across the continental United States, and sometimes also even Alaska and Hawaii. So if anyone else would like to share where they're joining from, I can call out some of those cities and states if you add them to the chat now. So before we get started this morning, I just wanted to briefly go over the register of the remaining events for this week, because most of you probably know that this is just the first of 4 sessions in our March virtual events. So as I go through the schedule of virtual events, Brian has already actually put links to the registration pages for all 3 of the other events into the chat box, the sticky note at the top of the chat box. And if you have not registered for any of these events yet, I really encourage you to go and click on those links and register now. And you don't need to worry. If you click on those links now, they will not open they won't take you away from this live room right now. They'll open in separate tabs. So you won't be redirected away. So if you'd like to go ahead and click on any of those links, please do. In 1 second, I'm going to get started with just going through exactly which sessions are happening when, but I see that people have actually, we've got Robert in Ponte Vedra, Florida. My grandfather actually lived in Ponte Vedra too, Robert. We have Steve in McKeesport. I believe that's here in Western Pennsylvania. David in San Antonio, Joan in Westford, Mass, Tom in NY, Paul in Seattle, Thomas in California. Thanks so much for sharing your cities and states. Oh, and Paul is a real veteran of our virtual and actually in-person events. Paul is joining us from Denton, Texas. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish up. So this morning, our session is going to go from 10 a.m. to noon, and then we'll have a brief intermission, and then we'll come back at 1 p.m. Eastern. And now from 1 to 3, we actually have a real special treat for everyone today. So session 2 of our virtual event series is usually dedicated to a Q&A, during which Jim answers questions in real time from the live room, and pre-submitted questions on all manner of retirement and financial, tax, estate planning topics. And that's always a great opportunity to get thoughtful answers to your most pressing questions. And again, he still will be answering a lot of questions during these sessions. So if you have questions at any time during this event this morning, please put your questions into the chat box. But today, we actually are not going to be doing a Q&A for session 2. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So for session 2, as some of you are probably already aware, Jim is in the process of finishing his book, Retire Secure for Professors. And that book is full of a lot of content that is unique to the unique components of financial planning for university faculty, but there's also a lot of content in there that applies to a broader audience of IRA and retirement planners like you. And more specifically, there's actually a lot of content in that book that has to do with Roth IRA and Roth conversion strategy. And that actually inspired Jim to develop session 2 for today, which is a full 2-hour session on Roth conversions and Roth conversion strategy. So that is a real treat, and it's actually very unique. This is the first time he's done this for a general audience in a virtual event, so you really don't want to miss that. And if you'd like to register for that, you can click the link for W2's registration page. And then tomorrow, we're starting again bright and early at 10 a.m. Eastern. And our first session tomorrow will be the best estate plan for IRA and retirement plan owners, including trust planning. So if you'd like to register for that event, you can click the link under W3. And again, it won't redirect you away to another page. And then tomorrow we'll also have a 1-hour break, and we'll return at 1 p.m. Eastern. And from 1 to 3, we'll be doing a live Q&A with Larry Swedroe, who is an investment expert. He's written, I think, over 9 best-selling books on investing, and also Adam Yofan along with Jim. And they'll all be answering questions on investing and wealth management and wealth preservation. That's always a great session, and Larry especially always answers a lot of really topical questions from the audience. You really don't want to miss that. And it's also hosted on a different platform. It's on Zoom, not on the platform we're on right now. So if you are a Webinar Jam auto subscriber, you won't be automatically subscribed to that event. So and I really suggest you don't want to miss it, go ahead and click the registration link under W4 if you haven't already done that. Again, that's a really great session, and it always gets a lot of really interesting questions and answers from all of the attendees and hosts of that event. So again, please click the registration links if you have not registered for any of the events. And one question that we get a lot usually during the live events is about replays. So if you are here and you've registered, or if you've registered for any of these events, if you have to leave early, or if you miss one of the events, you will receive a replay link via email in the days after the event. So anybody who is wondering about that, don't worry, you will receive it if you're registered. So thanks again to some additional people who gave us their cities and states. We have Chet in Anderson, South Carolina, and Tom in Evanston, Illinois. Okay, now I know everybody is really excited to get going. I'm excited for this first session of our first virtual event in 2022 for a general audience. So I'm going to do a brief introduction of Jim, and then I'll let him get started. I know he's really excited to begin his presentation. So Jim Lang, my boss and our presenter today, predicted that legislation designed to accelerate the taxation of inherited IRAs and retirement plans was coming more than 5 years before the Secure Act made it the law of the land. And by the time I joined the team here, now just over 4 years ago, Some of the other experts in the field of retirement planning had all but dubbed Jim the boy who cried wolf, or in this case, the boy who cried the death of the stretch IRA. But Jim and the other seasoned CPAs on our team had the foresight that almost no other experts did. They understood that the end of preferential tax treatment for inherited IRAs wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And instead of twiddling their thumbs and waiting to find out when it would happen, they hit the ground running. Jim and our team of talented CPAs used their expertise to develop practical strategic solutions that our clients and other retirement plan owners would be able to use to protect and defend their wealth and their financial legacies against the inevitable. And thanks to that combination of expertise and foresight, Jim and our team of tax, estate, and financial planning professionals have already helped hundreds of our clients implement those strategies as part of their holistic financial master plans. And you'll get a look at some of those strategies in this morning's session and this afternoon's session. And at this point, I'd like to take a moment to say hello and to give a special thank you to all of our virtual event alums. All of you who are longtime clients, new clients, regular attendees of our in-person workshops, or those of you who've been subscribing to our email list and reading Jim's educational content online for years. Thank you so much for choosing to spend another few hours listening and learning with us today. Of course, there are also those of you this morning for whom this is your first interaction with Jim and our firm and our virtual events. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with Jim's credentials, I want to assure you that he is an excellent resource for great at cutting-edge strategies and information on retirement and estate planning. He has practical experience. Jim and our team of legal experts have drafted over 3,000 wills and trusts. Our accounting firm prepares 760 tax returns every year, and in conjunction with our money management partners, our RIA oversees close to $1 billion in assets under management. He's a nationally recognized IRA, Roth IRA, and 401k expert whose tax and estate planning strategies have been endorsed by the Wall Street Journal 36 times. He's been featured in Newsweek, Forbes, Reader's Digest, Bottom Line, and Kiplinger's, just to name a few. And he's a paid contributor to Forbes.com, and his peer-reviewed articles have appeared in Trusted Estate Magazine, Financial Planning, The Tax Advisor, and the Journal of Retirement Planning. He's the author of 9 best-selling books, including Retire Secure, which was endorsed by a number of financial luminaries, from Larry King and Charles Schwab to Burton Malkiel and Ed Slott. And as a member of the team here at Lang, I've had the opportunity to get a unique behind-the-scenes view of just how much Jim cares about presenting great information in these events. And this particular content-heavy event is full of tax-savvy strategies for long-term planning that you're going to be able to implement, whether you decide to work with us or not. So without further ado, please welcome Jim Lang.
So I was cycling down the path with my friends in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And the path took us through a darkened tunnel. And I wasn't able to see one of the potholes in the tunnel, and I went down hard. I couldn't get up. I had to be rushed to the hospital. And there I got the bad news. I had a broken hip. The good news was there happened to be a surgeon on call, and I did need surgery to fix my hip, and they said that they could do the operation that night. And I asked the surgeon, out of curiosity, would it make much difference if I waited one day and then got the surgery? He said, well, you'd have a very unpleasant night, but no, that won't make any long-term difference. And I thought about it. Do I really want a general surgeon in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, who happened to be on call, or do I want to get transported to Pittsburgh and see a specialist? Well, that was a decision I made. I saw the specialist in Pennsylvania. And then after the surgery, I put together a team. I had a nutritionist, because there was specific nutrition information after you break a serious bone like a hip. I put together an acupuncturist. I put together a physical therapist, and I followed the advice of all these experts. And when I went in for my first checkup after after about a month, the surgeon said, and even though I was in my 50s at the time, the surgeon said I had the fastest recovery he had ever seen. And the reason I even bring this up is because what I did is I had a specialty situation, and instead of seeing generalists, I put together a team of specialists. And with the specialists, I got the best result that I could have possibly have received. And I'm going to suggest that maybe you might want to do the same thing. Now, I don't want to waste your precious time, and I will tell you right up front, the first 3 webinars that Erica referred to are mainly about retirement and estate planning strategies. They are not specifically about investments, buy IBM and sell AT&T, or put 10% more or less in stocks, or here's what's going on, with Russia and the Ukraine, or anything else. It is really long-term retirement and estate planning strategies that I think is kind of like the foundation of smart planning for you and your family. The 4th session is going to be a question and answer, and because we are having investment experts on that Q&A, that will primarily be investments. But the first 3, including today, are really retirement and estate planning strategies. And it's really for people who have substantial IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, SEPs, KIOs, etc. That will be the emphasis. And one of the reasons is because people who have those types of assets actually have a lot more control of their financial destiny. Rather than just concentrating on the investments themselves, you can concentrate on something that you can control, because we can't control the investments, we can't control the market, but we can control our tax strategies and how we respond to both classic strategies and to the new laws. It will be really helpful if you are what we call data-driven. So we have a lot of really smart clients and people who attend these events. That is just the nature of, let's say, the quantitative analysis that we provide. We tend to attract quantitative, bright people. And here's what I am hoping, that you come into it with an open mind. Sometimes people come to webinars in order to get what they already thought was the case confirmed. And if they hear something that isn't consistent with with their worldview, they reject it. Well, I'm going to ask you to please keep an open mind and to be what we call data-driven, meaning if you see incontrovertible, peer-reviewed analysis, that even if it wasn't what you had in mind, it might influence your behavior. And if you could type a Y in the chat area to say if you consider yourself data-driven. There are certainly people who consider themselves data-driven but aren't, but we are hoping that you are one that is data-driven. So what do a lot of IRA and retirement plan owners, and for that matter, everybody, want? If you could wave a magic wand, well, wouldn't it be great to be making great informed decisions and have the financial security that comes from not only having the right amount of money and getting the taxes and the strategies right, but knowing that you're doing the right thing? Because sometimes some of the anxiety comes from, gee, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or not. And having both an accumulation and a distribution plan for your IRAs, your other retirement plans, both while you're alive, and a great plan for after you're gone, in order to get the most for your family from these strategies. And also, wouldn't it be great to have your wills, your trust, your beneficiary designations, your retirement estate plan optimized? Well, of course, we don't have a magic wand, but maybe we can do the best thing, and we can help you achieve that goal. Obviously, we think it would be a lot easier if you worked with us, but even if you don't, to give you a lot of great information. So today we're going to talk about the most important principle of cutting taxes. And yes, this is a repeat, if you will, because these classic principles have been around, probably way back. There was a major change in 1998 when they instituted the Roth IRA, so that will be part of the important principles. We're going to talk about, and now we're going to get into some of the nitty-gritty, which I have not done in some of the prior workshops. What I've done This set of workshops is I have set aside 2 hours for dedicated Roth IRA conversions, so I'm not going to do much of Roth IRA conversions this talk, but what that allowed me is additional time to get into some of the nitty-gritty on the best order to save for retirement and the best order to spend after retirement. So we're going to be going through that. We're going to be talking about the nasty, nasty law known as the Secure Act, why it's so miserable, for you and your families, and more importantly, what you can do about it. Now, we're going to be talking about that some, and we're going to be talking about it from what I call the living part. Now, tomorrow at 10 Eastern, we're going to be talking about the best estate plan, and we're going to be going more into some of the nitty-gritty of the Secure Act, because the Secure Act does occur after death. You might have heard that the IRS just sent out their long-awaited Secure Act required minimum distribution regulations. And I could go through those, but I'm not, and for 2 reasons. Number one, if you dig into the regulations, they're really part of the, let's say, relatively obscure, not the most important things that I could talk about. Yes, they're newer, but the other thing is they're just proposed regulations at this point. They're not final. So spending a lot of time on them, I do not think is appropriate, because there is more important information to get to. Again, we're not going to talk about Roths this morning. That might come as a huge relief, because in prior talks, I almost always talk about Roths. So if you're not interested in Roths, you're not a good candidate for Roth IRAs or Roth IRA conversions. Good news, this talk won't have it. Bad news is, or good news for people who are interested in Roths, we'll have a dedicated 2-hour Roth at 1 Eastern today. So we're going to also talk about gifting and a few other strategies. We did allow time for questions, and we encourage you to ask questions. That's actually my favorite part of the workshop.